Welcome back to AI Podcast in 26.1 minutes. I have with us today Don Chu and another Don Miner. Welcome, Don.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome, Don.
It's good to be here.
So, a little bit about your background. You were just about to tell us off the radio.
Yeah.
Where are you coming from, Don? And I know you're now part of the organization I'm a part of, but how'd you get here?
Yeah. Happy to be a collaborator now at Atos or our companies, and so I currently live in Maryland, and I have lived in Maryland my whole life. I'm pretend to be a data scientist still, but kind of definitely moved towards the business side over the past few years. And but leading up to this, I ran a machine learning AI consulting company called Miner and Kosh, and which did a lot of AI machine learning services for Fortune 500s, retail companies, construction companies, finance, pharma, healthcare, rail, a few different places. And before that, I was I went in and out of the government community, doing different like big data implementations and data science stuff there, and also did a stint at EMC Greenplum doing a bunch of Hadoop stuff. Before that, I got my PhD from University of Maryland, Baltimore County in computer science. Did a bunch of machine learning stuff there.
So, it sounds like a long life passion for you to do computer science and data science.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey with some twists and a decent amount of luck thrown in. But yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. So on that, we when I graduated my PhD in 2010, which was computer science, machine learning, I was doing machine learning stuff because I just thought it was interesting, and there wasn't really a job market for it then. And so I went out and got a quote unquote real job, and doing software engineering. And that's when I got thrown into Hadoop and um, primarily worked with that technology stack, up until for 5, 6 years, day in and day out. I wrote a book from O'Reilly called MapReduce Design Patterns during that time, and was very involved in the community there, doing lots of large implementations with that. But I didn't really do very much like machine learning, at that time with the Hadoop stack. So I spent this long time just kind of doing that work and really getting deep on that and just being really passionate about large data sets. And then the industry kind of folded back in on my expertise, and AI, machine learning, and data science really started picking up, and big data and data science collided. So I was kind of lucky that this machine learning stuff I did in my PhD program that I hadn't used in 5 years became relevant again, and that was neat. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on the past 4 or 5 years, has been the intersection of those two things.
When the world caught up with you on data science and ML, was it just pure delight, or was there some frustration trying to get people up to speed?
It was good for me. I built my business on that luck, right? So I think it was exciting to see the industry getting excited about things that I thought had been cool for a really long time, and being in the spot of a consultant, I was able to work with a lot of cool companies that were getting in on the ground floor, and that's always been my sweet spot. What I've enjoyed the most is working with those types of people.
Do you have any anecdotal situations that you ran into in the early adoption of machine learning and AI?
Yeah, in terms of like getting people to adopt it, or just like disasters. What kind of anecdotes?
Well,
I got a big book of anecdotes.
either one will do, whatever you find appropriate. Yeah.
I think early on, and this is still true, is that the adoption, like most of the people that I'm talking to are doing their first AI machine learning project, and that's why they're talking to us as consultants. And there had to be a lot of change come internally from us and me as a consultant to get them to do that. Mostly because when they're doing a project for the first time, there's a lot of trust and anxiety. Usually, we're working with somebody that's a visionary at the company that wants to push these things, and they usually have one shot. If their AI machine learning project goes south, then that's going to reflect poorly on them. So I think what I found was that really seeing a good view of the market, and being able to determine how in what places I can actually be confident and tell customers like, yeah, you really should do this and work hard at this. So I think early on in the conversation, we had a lot of. I was talking to so to give you an anecdote, I was talking to a clothing company pretty on in my kind of like independent consulting career, and they had a massive amount of opportunity, and I was selling them on all the things that were possible and everything, and then it the job died because our website was trash, right? So they were like, hey, our accounting people looked at your website and it's complete garbage, which I completely agreed with. And so I mean that's where the project died on the vine, was that we didn't exude that confidence that and I don't know if I had it, but now that I've gotten this experience and I've worked with lots of different companies that were at different stages, we can go into those companies now and really speak from a place of experience and say, hey,
So I
we
want
should
to
do this.
stop you right there because it sounds like to me you're saying that and this is a little bit reverse problem for some places, is that the buzz around AI, because you didn't display it, you were losing business, versus there's disruptors out there that we speak on our show all the time about being a little annoyed about the buzz being too much in
Yeah,
some places.
yeah, yeah. I think I think it's a problem for both sides. I think the buzz is getting people excited and is getting people to want to invest in these things, but it's not strong enough to get people like accounting on board, right, or traditional business managers, CEOs. So I think I am frustrated by the buzz a little bit. But one thing that's nice as a consultant is that I can fight that buzz, right? Like I'm as an independent person, not working for my company or not working for like a line of business, and also too not working for a software vendor. I'm kind of able to take that impartial view and tell my client like, look, that's just buzz. You need to ignore that. That product's not going to solve all your problems, or reinforcement learning isn't going to solve all your problems, and kind of tell them like what realistically we've seen and give them actual examples of other projects we've worked on, and paint that picture, a realistic picture for them. I think that's my job, right? Is like, okay, so maybe I get a call because of buzz, so I'm going to let the buzz keep happening, right? Because I keep getting sales calls because of it. But at the end of the day, like once I actually get with a customer and build some trust, it allows us to be really honest with them and actually drive them to having a successful outcome rather than just satisfying some like buzzy itch.
This is a question for both Dons and maybe Don Shu. Don Shu,
Uh oh. What?
I rarely ask you questions, but what is the appropriate balance of buzz about AI versus delivery of AI? Do you think that the buzz is inhibiting or enabling?
Well, from a sales standpoint, it's always important to manage expectations, because if there's such a huge misalignment from the person who's buying the service, or AI in this case, and they're expecting in their imaginations something that's completely unrealistic, that's tough to surmount. I mean, it's almost better, I think, in sometimes to get a skeptical customer and then turn them around through
Yeah.
education.
Interesting. Because I think maybe it comes down to style then, because like I feel like I've been pretty successful myself with the excited customer, right? And then kind of talking them off the excitement, but then redirecting them to something that's realistically valuable. Because I think that's where we've been successful, is like looking at their holistic problems. Like maybe they get drawn in for some particular use case that they've seen some buzz about. But then when we really explain it, there's still business value to be had. Like I believe that AI can provide business value, and I think it's one of the most important technologies for driving net new business value at companies right now. And so like the excitement's there, but then you kind of have to like, you know, redirect it to something that actually provides value. And then as long as we present something that's like, hey, look, this thing actually provides value and it's going to cost you this much to build it and it's going to, bring you this much return, they can't say no to that. Even if it's not exactly what they were looking for up front.
So you showed this a passion for computer science early on. It sounds like you got your PhD in it. You started a startup in this space, grew it to over 30 people, and you converted it into a very large organization. as well and continue to strive, for success in that space. And I'm sure you'll gain it many times over. But what gets you up in the morning? What do you wake up excited about in the morning now that you've made this such part of your practice?
Yeah, I think I love seeing the variety of use cases that are coming out now. Like every day, I'm seeing people applying AI to new problems, or we have the opportunity to work on with AI on new problems, whether they're topical, like working on we've worked on already several use cases that involve COVID-19, and that's exciting. And helping out retail companies and manufacturing companies with this crisis is really interesting. But even if there isn't COVID-19, there's always this idea that there's this next new use case like right around the corner. And I think at the core fundamental value, like my excitement isn't necessarily focused in data science or machine learning or AI. And I think this translates over to the hoop stuff. I think I'm always excited about computers doing like just cool things, right? Like I want to take a step back and say, wow, it's really cool that we got a computer to be able to do that. And that's what gets me excited. And just the influx of use cases that we're seeing that can be solved by AI is really exciting. I mean, some of the sales conversations we're having right now are just, I just never thought we'd be able to do some of the stuff that we're doing right now. And I just want to see what's next. And I want to see if it actually works.
Innovation and technology. Don can speak on that too. Don Shu can speak on that as well. He has some great ideas.
Well, retail, that's really interesting. Particularly for me being in Seattle, I've observed Nordstrom, which is a great brand in retail, though they've struggled a lot with tech. I mean, what have you seen in there, and maybe some success stories?
Sure. We have a couple pretty big retail customers as one of the industries that we've worked with probably the most over our career. And it's there's a lot of interesting problems in there. And I think where we're seeing I have a couple of things that I'm really excited about in retail right now, but one of the big things is around hyper personalization. So even if there's a lot of technologies out there, and actually, you know what? I think the big problem with retail was that they were actually pretty sophisticated from an analytics standpoint before AI came around. And I think actually in some industries that does them a disservice, like in finance, for example, is another case of this, where you could go to a construction company and introduce some AI stuff and it's mind blowing, right? But in a retail, their baseline analytics skill was pretty high and sophisticated. So, but the big thing that we're seeing right now is around hyper personalization, like recommendation engines, targeted marketing campaigns, targeting queue buying, and really narrowing in on like the individual consumer that they have and providing them what they want. Like one great example is like we wrote some models that basically like looked at your previous I mean, if you think about it, my style and my purchase habits for clothing, it's not one of my priorities. So basically I just buy the same thing. When my red polo gets a hole in it, I go buy another red polo, right? And we were very successful in figuring out what exactly people want to buy. So we were able to really narrow it in and say, here's an email that has a model wearing something that we should buy, and there we maybe have 40 items we could show you, but we want to show you this one because it's the one that's going to get you in the store. Like that's something that's been really successful and something we're excited about.
Do you tie in the consumer with the prediction eventually, like human in the loop, with any of this?
For the marketing campaigns, I think they're moving towards more automated. I think they're still scared about going full blown. And they're very controlled environments where I think a lot of retail companies right now are still in the testing phase of this, where we generate like a list of emails that we want to send, right? And some human kind of scrolls through it and approves it. But I haven't seen anything right now personally where they've just completely let the AI loose.
Yeah, well, enough talk about work. Let's talk about
Sure.
your personal view on AI. And I love to ask this question. I ask it almost every episode. Do you have any precautionary tale? Do you have any
Yeah.
worries about AI? Do you have any ethical concerns? What is the downside of AI right now?
I think my biggest concern right now is that there's a lot of emphasis on the vendor space of AI, of building tools and out of the box functionality that makes AI easier to do. And so, however, that's the easy stuff in AI, right? So there's building models and machine learning, and I mean that's like a 10-line scikit-learn script. And making that part of your job easier, making it more accessible to people, I think is a little dangerous, because you give this like illusion of power to individuals that aren't fully trained on what it means to make a machine learning model, right? Like what are you actually doing? And so what I'm scared about is people not taking into consideration, building racist models or sexist models. Like a great example is that Amazon use case where they had their recruiting model turned out to be sexist, or there's been examples of racist models in the past as well. Where I think if you're just like, hey, look, I got this data set in a CSV file. I didn't even look at the data, and I plugged it into my tool, and it spit out a model that has 98% accuracy, and I'm just going to go deploy this thing, I think is like a workflow that I'm pretty scared about. And while these tools have been really helpful for my data scientists and making our jobs more efficient, it is scary to me that while people are necessarily ethical, they're not out to be unethical. It allows for some accidental abuse is I think what I'm scared about. So when we start talking about governance and bias in models and perpetuating bias, it gives me some concern.
What's your tactic for addressing that bias? Is that the composition of the team, or is that making sure that the data that you're pulling in is widely representative? What are your key points on addressing that?
There's two ends of the spectrum there. Like, and I think any good data scientist is considering this. One is, what does the data look like coming into it? What kind of exploratory data analysis are we doing on the data coming in? And we're looking at the data and finding the statistical trends. And so kind of some anecdote. I have both statistical minded PhD types. I have computer science minded PhD types, and then I have the physicists who are just kind of crazy. But the stats and the computer scientist people, the stats people really want to understand the data before they go into it, right? And they do a lot of exploratory data analysis and really understand the trends, and then they just simply use the machine learning to, as the capstone of their thoughts, right? The computer scientist works backwards. So the computer scientist will just like throw models at the problem and see which ones work best. But they'll perform like good testing on the back end, right? So they'll look at the model and determine, the F1 score and like all the confusion matrix, and really dive into why the model's performing the way it does. So I've seen this big contrast between the stats data scientists and the computer science. Like, do they handle the problem up front, or do they handle the problem later? And what I found is that, both of those have merits, and you really should do both. So our traditional, data science engagements and how I advise most people to do data science is that you can't just take data, plug it into a model, and hope for the best. Even if it does provide you good accuracy, you really have to look at what does the data coming in, what is it telling us? And the model is simply the encoding of that understanding, right? Instead of just the discovery in itself. And then on the back end, you need to test the model. Like, which cases are going wrong? Like, we had an example where we did a computer vision use case that I can't even, the data set was insane, but it was detecting nudity in images. And turned out our model didn't work on people of color. So it said all people of color were naked. And obviously, it's not like we're damaging any lives, I think, in this case, but it was kind of embarrassing because, people of color in our data set were only like 1%. So we were still getting like 98% accuracy. And we were like, yeah, great, 98% is great. But when we actually looked at the testing and saw the correlations between the ones we were getting wrong, it turned out they were all people of color. So that's like the kind of thing that you can run into. And if we didn't do proper testing, or the people that were doing the work didn't know how to do testing, we would have missed that. So that's my advice, is like, go into the problem, do proper exploratory data analysis, understand your data, and then on the back end, make sure you're testing your models and understanding where it's getting things wrong. And what its blind spots are, and making sure that they're not like legally non-compliant.
I love the answer personally, and I think it's, like I said, we've done 30 episodes by now, and I'll give you a ballpark high five on that answer. Because it absolutely resonates with me on the consulting level of, these are the things that people need to watch out for when they're building ethical models. What is your, to take it a step further, take it a step deeper, what is your thoughts on, the privacy of data issues and how that interplays here?
Yeah.
Is, machine learning and things like that, can it help you fight that concerns of or is it hurt it, or what is our?
Oh, that's a great question. I think yeah. So I think it can hurt and help. So I mean, obviously, there's this like whole uh, Manhattan Project kind of issue here, right? Where we're a bunch of scientists working on building AIs and things like that that could be used for really like bad things, or it can be used for good things. And we kind of struggle with that ethical dilemma. And I feel like I try to work on projects that are not in the negative side. Um, but I think machine learning can really help. Like one issue we're running into right now is that we're brainstorming some ideas around retail and using computer vision for this stuff. And there's a couple of other use cases where we're doing computer vision stuff off security camera footage. And a lot of these companies that are working with security cameras are really nervous about storing all that data for long periods of time because it has actual people in this video. And that's what we need though to train models. Like we just want to see our customers engaged, like what parts of the store are they walking in, how or who's picking up apples and then putting them back down, whatever kind of activity you might want to see in a scene based on security footage. But there's this privacy concern if we're like storing all this data about individuals. There's even legal implications in some states and countries. And so one thing we're talking about right now is actually using AI at the edge, meaning that very close to the collection before it comes into the cloud, to use machine learning to obfuscate faces, for example. So whether it's just blanking it out, and mostly just blanking it out, honestly, in scenarios where we don't really care who it is, we just care that they're picking up an apple, and would allow us to store that data in a private way without ever impacting consumer privacy. So I think machine learning can really help with that. I've also looked at some use cases of using machine learning to de-bias resumes, pointing out things that would induce any sort of like gender bias in resumes or ethical bias. And so I think it can help, but I think it can also perpetuate some of these things as well.
It's interesting. So you're using fire to fight fire there, it sounds like.
Well, I don't know if that usually works, right? But yeah, we'll see.
Brian's favorite question is the cautionary tale. Mine is who thinks predictively. And going back to the personas you described of the statisticians, the coders, and the wild physicists,
Yeah.
Which of that group do you find generally thinks better or grasps predictive better?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody does it better. Like I feel like I get the best results when I get all three of those guys in a room, right? So you get the. I think though when I have, so let's say I have a physicist, data scientist, the computer science data scientist, and a stat.
They walk into a bar.
They walk into a bar, yeah. I think what we usually see is that I find that the computer scientists maybe are the creative ones that are like coming up with ideas, art of the possible kind of thing. The statisticians though keep us honest, right? So so you got the computer scientists coming up with ideas and like throwing things up the wall. The statisticians like, look, that's not right, or that's not going to work, or that doesn't have statistical founding and truth, things like that. And then meanwhile, the physicist is just kind of staying off to the side, and then the physicist will just say something out of the blue and it was like, wow, that's a genius idea. Like we have a lot of like some of our kind of craziest ideas of how to implement these things like come from this kind of out of the box thinking that the physicists provide. And I'm saying physicists, I mean, I have a couple of physicists that work for me, and that's like how that usually works. But it could be other disciplines, I guess, outside of the traditional ones. But yeah, so I guess it really is a team approach, and I'm not sure. We've seen benefits of having a diverse team.
So what is the ideal team composition out there? If you were to ask someone to build a pod here to solve the next new problem with AI and machine learning, what does that look like?
Interesting. So, I think there's a lot to be said about the size of this team. So let me just answer that question first. I don't think anybody's really been super successful in building very large data science teams. So I'm talking about like 40 plus people working on the same problem. I think even very large organizations that have 40 plus data scientists are breaking them up into different projects, right? Like you are working on this data science problem, you're working on this data science problem. And we know too, like software teams of that size too are challenging, but we haven't had to tackle that yet really as a society. But on the smaller scale side, if you're tackling one problem, I like diverse viewpoints. There's so much creativity that goes into solving these problems where I just want the most diverse team possible in every way, right? I want, people of different data science backgrounds. I want the PhD alongside of the person with the School of Hard Knocks. I want a senior person. I want a junior person. Um, I want somebody from California. I want somebody from Maryland. Like even West Coast, East Coast data scientists like have different perspectives. So I would kind of say like first number one is diversity, but to get more specific, like if I had like if you gave me 6 FTEs that I could fill a team out, I think my dream team would be like a stats data scientist, a computer science data scientist, like a data engineer type individual, a platform architect, which is really interesting because the platform architect, so this is somebody that's building out like the cloud platform or the databases and things like that. I mean, nobody's building AI and then deploying like a model out of a Jupyter notebook, right? Like not enough people are building full end-to-end machine learning AI solutions, and you need that platform person, you need the data engineer to get that to be done. And the third person, finally, that's really important is this UI UX person. Not nearly enough people are like tying up the findings in like an actual UI UX that makes sense and conveys information to a human, right? Like no human is like looking at raw model output out of a Jupyter notebook, and we've seen huge success in just throwing a really skilled UI developer on these projects. Um, so yeah, I think my answer there is like diversity, but also to full scope. Like don't just focus on the AI stuff. You need to have platform people, the data engineering people, and the UI people all together.
Okay, that's very helpful. So I think we're reaching our 26.1 minutes, which is the average commute time. Is there any leave behind any way that folks can contact you or anything you want to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to contact me, I would look me up on LinkedIn. Donald Miner. That's probably my most active social media site, and that'd be a good place to start. And with that, I just hope everybody keeps having fun with AI. I think it needs to be a fun thing. I just got done teaching a AI class at my local university, and there's a lot of excitement and kids that are having fun with it. I think it's the most fun thing you could be doing with computers right now. And I think if we lose sight of that, then um, the industry will be a lot more boring. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Don and Don.